Welcome and welcome back to the House Huddle. We are going to move on into chapter 3 of Babywise and potentially chapter 4. It really just depends on how lengthy this chapter is. I also wanted to share with you, I'm working on a more extensive project behind the scenes regarding the DA, Michael Ruark, and really just kind of deep diving into previous cases and the impact that it potentially had or has had on even his career, which I think is very important to deep dive into a little bit, just so that we have a better understanding for why he may or may not have chosen the path that he did in the Watts case. I do believe that there's quite a bit of evidence to prove and even support the position that he took. So I'm working really hard on that. I want to make sure, obviously, that it's very thorough, that it remains respectful, and it's really helping in the advocacy part, especially here in my local community, just kind of helping the channel push to create a bigger impact locally and just reaching those that may or may not have been impacted through some shape or form of domestic violence, because Lord knows we all know somebody that has endured it, if it is not yourself. So that being said, let's just dive into chapter 3 and just be on the lookout, guys, for that. It'll be a trailer that I'll post first, and then once I get the narration and everything edited, I will be uploading the newest video, and I'll set the premiere. I'll try to set the premiere so that you guys have several hours to prepare to watch it. I know a lot of times I'll finish an episode or a video and then I'll just put it right out. But this one is really, in my opinion, it's probably one of the more impactful pieces that I've really been working on, and it's something that is near and dear to my heart personally. So I think it's really important for the sake of the channel and true crime discussion, and really just keeping an overall objective approach to discussing the case that so many of you guys continue to ask for content on. I know I keep steering into different cases, and you guys keep, demanding and asking for more Watts content, and I don't have a problem in the world covering Watts. I feel like there's so much to talk about. However, I want to make sure, again, that on this channel, it's not just a mere regurgitation of the content that we already know is out there. So if all we're doing is recycling old content and continuing to break down, edit, and re-narrate the same narrative, then that's really not creating any type of impact, and that's not really helping anybody. That's more along the lines of gossiping, and I really don't want that to be for this channel. And so I do look forward to having more. I do have many episodes mapped out for Watts. It's just a matter of which ones come together and fully develop are the ones that end up getting published. So with that being said, I'm really excited to share that new project with you guys. So look out for that, and let's start chapter 3 with Babywise. Chapter 3, Babies and Sleep. You're in a coffee shop enjoying a latte, surfing the web on your mobile device while your baby plays contentedly with his bright orange teething ring, occasionally glancing up from his car seat. Suddenly you hear a total stranger comment, "Oh my, what a happy baby you have, so content and alert." You smile with a gesture of appreciation, but are not surprised by the kind words. Scenes like this are not uncommon to the PDF parent. What do comments like these have to do with sleeping? Everything. When your baby begins to sleep through the night, people will invariably say, "You're so lucky," or "You've got an easy baby." Neither statement is true. Your baby will be sleeping through the night because you worked hard to help him achieve the gift of nighttime sleep. You deserve credit for your efforts, but do you keep this fact in perspective? Training your baby to sleep through the night is not the final goal of parenting, but it does provide a good foundation for everything else that follows. Sleep, or lack thereof, is a precious commodity. It is one of the most significant influences on a healthy life. Sleep is critically important during the first year because the human growth hormone is released during deep sleep. Equally important are the quality and quantity of an infant's sleep because they affect more than just the baby. They also impact the welfare of everyone in the household, making the difference between being a joyful, alert parent or a fatigued one. Boy, do I know about that. Babywise babies are characterized by contentment, healthy growth, and optimal alertness. These babies truly exude happiness, which after all is tied back to being well rested. In fact, healthy, full-term babies are born with capacity to achieve 7 to 8 hours of continuous nighttime sleep between 7 and 10 weeks of age and 10 to 12 hours of sleep by 12 weeks of age. But these achievements require parental guidance and basic understanding of how a baby's routine impacts healthy outcomes. Can it really happen? Why some babies are able to sleep through the night early on and others are not has long been the subject of debate and study. The theories range from simple to complex, from logical to bizarre. Well-meaning friends may have told the inexperienced first-time mom that every child is different. They go on to say that some babies are born sleepers and others are not. New mothers hope they luck out and get a sleeper. Behavioral clinicians suggest that a child's temperament is the determining influence on sleep. They tell parents that some children have an easier temperament and are more prone to sleep, while other children fight sleep. More extreme are the suggestions that some babies classified as high need will wake up more often during the night, and low need babies sleep longer on their own. Although each statement contains a grain of truth, the statements themselves are outdated. Rest assured, you can and should expect your baby to acquire the skills of sleeping throughout the night, but rarely does it happen without parental training. Consider the 4 core sleep facts. Sleep fact 1. Babies do not have the ability to organize their own days and nights into predictable rhythms, but they have the biological need to do so. That is why parents must take the lead and create structure and routine for their babies and for themselves. An infant's feeding routine benefits mom as well. She is healthier, more rested, and less stressed. She has time and energy for other important relationships, her husband, parents, family, and friends. If there are siblings in the home, the baby's routine provides time for planned activities with big brother or sister. As life with baby becomes more predictable, mom can confidently plan the day's activities, knowing she is meeting her baby's needs. Everyone wins with the PDF. To increase the likelihood of continuous nighttime sleep, a parent-guided feed, wake up, sleep, or PDF routine is essential. The key to nighttime sleep lies in the order of those 3 daytime activities. First comes feeding time, followed by wake time, and then nap time. The sequence of these 3 activities repeats itself throughout the day. The more consistent the routine, the more quickly a baby learns to adapt and organize his feed, wake, sleep cycles. Established rhythms lead to continuous nighttime sleep. I will say, if you hear the hum in the background, I do apologize. It is my dishwasher. I try to silence it out, but sometimes that doesn't work. Sleep fact number 2. The quality of each activity is as important as the order of each activity. To reemphasize the principle of the ripple effect, the stone that creates the initial ripple is the quality of each feeding. That means mom must work to make each feeding a full feeding. Babies, and especially newborns, are prone to doze off while feeding, thereby taking only a partial meal. When that happens, especially with breastfed babies, the child is not taking enough to satisfy his nutritional needs. When mom consistently works with her baby to take a full feeding, it eventually leads to productive wake times. A good wake time impacts nap time, and a good napper is a better feeder. As the quality of each activity deepens, it facilitates healthy nighttime sleep. In turn, optimal sleep in a 24-hour cycle impacts optimal alertness, which improves cognitive function that increases brain growth and encourages a host of other neurologic benefits. Where does it all begin? It begins with the first stone, when the baby receives a high quality feeding. Now, about the feeding, I will share with you that it's pretty often taught in the hospitals when you're nursing that, if you notice that the baby dozes off, you're to kind of like stimulate their cheeks or rub the bottom of their feet to wake them so that they can continue to feed. And I know it's controversial. Nursing has always been controversial and argumentative when it comes to bottle versus breast, or how long you should feed on each side, or does it matter? And again, I just want to reiterate that we are reading this book to better understand what exactly is Babywise and why has it been so controversial in this case. So again, I've not read this book before. I'm reading it with you, but as I read along, I'll share with you bits and pieces or tidbits of information that I've gathered along the way as well. So I would be interested to hear if that was something that you practiced as a mother with your child. If they laid and they started to feed and they dozed off and went to sleep, did you just end the feeding at that time, or did you try to encourage them to at least get, I think it's 2 to 3 ounces when they're newborns? So just drop it in the comments below. Sleep fact number 3. From birth onward, infant hunger patterns will either organize into stable and regular periods or become erratic and unpredictable. When infants are fed on the PDF plan, their hunger patterns stabilize. There are 2 reasons for this. First, babies have an innate ability to organize their feeding times into a predictable rhythm and will do so if encouraged by mom's feeding philosophy. Second, the hunger mechanism, digestion and absorption, responds to routine feedings with a metabolic memory. Now, I do know that makes sense, because if you have ever, I don't want to say dieted, but if you've ever monitored your meals, like for me with fitness competitions, you get on such a metabolic clock that when you're eating every 2 hours as a fitness competitor, you can tell physically when you're coming up on that second hour or when you're about 15 minutes past, because your body begins signaling big time to you that you're hungry. So I do find that interesting. Let's see. For example, if a mom feeds her baby approximately every 3 hours, so let's say 7 a.m., 10 a.m., 1 p.m., 4 p.m., 7 p.m., and 10 p.m., the baby's hunger cycle begins to synchronize with those times. When that is established, daytime sleep cycles organize, and then nighttime sleep follows. The exact times above are not as important as the predictability they represent. There's nothing magical about those times. Parents can start at 6 a.m. if that works better for them. The principle here is consistency, which leads to predictability. In contrast, erratic feeding periods work against a child's ability to organize good feeding rhythms, which creates confusion within the child's metabolic memory. For example, the mom who follows a cry feeding philosophy may feed him at 8 a.m. and then 30 minutes later, when her baby cries, she feeds him again. An hour may pass and he feeds, followed by 3 more hours before the next feeding, then 20 minutes. The next day, everything is different, including the length of each feeding and the timing of each cycle. When there is no consistency in the amount of time between feedings and this pattern continues for weeks, it is very difficult for the feed-wake-sleep cycles to stabilize. As a result, these babies have a difficulty establishing stable and uninterrupted nighttime sleep. Waking as often as every 2 hours on a reoccurring basis. This pattern may continue for 2 years or more, according to some studies. Not surprisingly, formula-fed babies who are not on a routine usually end up with the same results. Take note of the next fact, which is sleep fact 4. It is not what goes in the mouth as much as when it goes in. So, it is not what goes in the mouth as much as when it goes in. Failure to establish nighttime sleep is not associated with the source of food, i.e. breast milk or formula. Our sleep study of 520 infants demonstrated that PDF breastfed babies will sleep through the night on average at the same rates and in many cases slightly sooner than formula-fed babies. This statistical conclusion means one cannot rightly attribute nighttime sleep to a tummy full of formula. The statistics also demonstrate that neither of the composition of breast milk or formula nor the speed at which the two are digested have any bearing on a child's ability to establish healthy nighttime sleep patterns. And guys, the studies are listed in the back of the book. What's the big deal about sleep? When a 1 or 2-year-old is continually waking at night, it often reflects two possibilities: misguided parenting advice or misplaced sleep priorities. Unfortunately, these children are forced to exist on a starvation ration of sleep. It is not healthy for them or their parents. Try to imagine what it would feel like to wake up 2 or more times every night for an entire week. The destructive impact of sleep deprivation on an adult's central nervous system is well documented. Deficits include diminished motor skills, decreased ability to think, irritability, loss of focusing capacity, emotional instability, and cellular and tissue breakdown. That is just a partial list. Now imagine a young child who does not sleep continuously for 8 hours in any of the 365 nights a year. Is it not possible that many of the learning disabilities common in children today are rooted in something as basic as chronic lack of sleep? As the higher brain continues to develop during the first year of life, the absence of continuous nights of sleep is surely detrimental to the learning process. Statistical norms for PDF babies. A child's body develops faster during the first year of life than any other time. While babies need adequate nutrition to help facilitate healthy growth, they also require extended periods of restorative sleep. Why is that? Because babies grow during times of extended sleep. The kind of sleep a baby achieves determines the true value of his sleep. Half a baby's sleep time is spent in quiet sleep or relaxed sleep pattern, known as RSP, and the other half in active sleep or ASP. Researchers tell us these two patterns alternate about every 30 to 45 minutes during sleep. Noticeable differences exist between the two patterns. During the RSP, parents see a peaceful baby. The baby's face is relaxed, eyelids closed, and still. He has very few body movements and breathing is quiet and regular. It is also during this relaxed or deep sleep that 70 to 80% of the baby's growth hormone is secreted. That means healthy sleep habits and healthy growth are connected. The active sleep state is more restless. This is often the time with both children and adults when dreams occur. The extent to which babies dream is not fully understood, but during this period, a parent will notice their baby's arms and legs stir, their eyes flutter, and facial muscles move, sucking, frowning, and chewing motions. Breathing is irregular and slightly faster. What they're describing, guys, is stuff that we still exhibit as adults. And I think it is very interesting because I'm a firm believer that lack of sleep contributes to many of the ailments that we see today. But if you think about the lack of sleep that most adults get and the amount of central nervous system related disorders that we are facing today, given the digital age that we live in, and technology is always at our fingertips and we never really learn to shut off. I know I'm the queen of sleeping with the TV on, which I know is not it's not recommended, but I just think that's really interesting for them to obviously mention it when it relates to babies, but it also very much holds true to us as adults. So it says no promises, but while we cannot offer any guarantees, we can provide the following statistics that represent PDF norms. The following conclusions were drawn from a sampling of 520 infants, 266 boys, and 254 girls, of which 380 were exclusively breastfed, 59 were exclusively formula fed, and 81 were fed a combination. There were 468 babies with no medical conditions and 52 with medical conditions detected at birth or shortly after. Included in the medical conditions profile were 15 premature infants. All parents followed the PDF strategy. For the breastfed babies, routine feedings were defined as feeding every 2.5 to 3 hours for the first 8 weeks. For the formula-fed babies, the routine feedings were every 3 to 4 hours. Nighttime sleep was defined as sleeping continuously 7 to 8 hours through the night. Volunteer subjects were drawn from the United States, Canada, and New Zealand. The study revealed the following. Category 1, exclusively breastfed babies. Of the breastfed girls, 86.9% were sleeping through the night between 7 to 9 weeks, and 97% were sleeping through the night by 12 weeks of age. Of the breastfed boys, 76.8% were sleeping through the night between 7 and 9 weeks, and 96% were sleeping through the night by 12 weeks. Category 2, exclusively formula-fed babies. Of these babies, the girls that were fed formula, 82.1% were sleeping through the night between 7 to 9 weeks, and 96.4% were sleeping through the night by 12 weeks. Of the formula-fed boys, 78.3% were sleeping through the night between 7 to 9 weeks, and 95.7% were sleeping through the night by 12 weeks. So guys, I know there's been a lot of ridicule and criticism about the girls sleeping through the night when they were younger, but it's not unheard of. And again, before any of us jump to conclusions or jump to assumptions about what she did or didn't do, may have, or the bigger question to ask yourself is, how does this impact you? How does this impact what you choose to do? Because yes, we're talking about nursing and bottle fed feedings with babies, but as adults, how consistent is your own sleep schedule? How many times a night do you wake up at night? How, what does your nutrition look like? Do you just eat when you're hungry randomly through the day? And if so, are you overweight? Are you malnourished? And keep in mind, guys, just because you're skinny doesn't mean that you're healthy. So with that in mind, category 3 were the infants with medical conditions, so like reflux, colic, premature delivery, viral infections, and unspecified hospitalizations. All slept 8 to 9 hours through the night between 13 and 16 weeks. As these statistical percentages demonstrate, parents can guide their baby's sleep-wake rhythms quite early and with a high degree of predictability. In addition, 80% of the babies in our survey began sleeping through the night on their own without any further parental guidance apart from routine feedings. It just happened. There were some periods of night crying by the remaining 20% of infants. Most of that took place over a 3-day period, and the crying was between 5 to 35 minutes in the middle of the night. On average, it took 3 to 5 days for a 9-week-old baby to break the old patterns of waking during the night to acquire the new skill of sleeping through the night. And then the next section is healthy sleep patterns. How well did you sleep last night? Is a question spouses often ask each other, yet we never ask, how well was your wake time today? Did you know that there are different levels of wakefulness? While sleep ranges from a relaxed sleep to a fitful sleep, the awake state ranges from tiredness to optimal alertness. Most important is the fact that optimal sleep is linked to optimal alertness, which directly impacts optimal learning. What role does healthy sleep play in developmental process? The documented fact is that babies who sleep well at night make for smarter children. In his book, Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Child, Dr. Mark Weisenbluth, director of the Sleep Disorders Center at Children's Memorial Hospital in Chicago, references the work of Dr. Lewis M. Terman. Dr. Terman is best known for the Stanford Binet Intelligence Test, according to Weisenbluth. Terman's findings on factors influencing IQ continue to stand unchallenged to this day. His study looked at 3,000 children in every age category, children who were found to have superior intelligence and had one common link. All of them had experienced healthy and sustained nighttime sleep from early infancy until the day they were tested. In 1983, Dr. Terman's studies were objectively repeated by Canadian researchers, and the same conclusions were reached. So that's interesting. That wasn't just one test, that was 2 experiments. Children with healthy sleep patterns clearly had higher IQs than children who did not sleep well. Dr. Weisblue speaks not only on the positive aspects of healthy sleep, but also the negative aspects of disruptive sleep. He warns parents that sleep problems not only disrupt a child's nights, they also disrupt his days by making him less mentally alert, more inattentive, unable to concentrate, or easily distracted, and by making him more physically impulsive, hyperactive, or alternatively lazy. Think about that, guys. If you have a child that has ADHD or struggles to really focus in school, maybe decreasing the screen time, taking the phones away, and really building a healthy nighttime routine will help out. And again, I'm not saying, by no means offering medical advice or anything like that. If your child's taking medication, you definitely need to consult your doctor about healthy alternatives as well. But I think we all can agree that we could all benefit from a more routine sleep cycle and sleep schedule. Sleep props. The typical infant has the natural ability to sleep through the night sometime by the end of the 2nd month of life. It is an acquired skill enhanced by routine. Sleep deprivation in infants and toddlers, on the other hand, reflects the absence of that skill being achieved. There are a number of possible reasons for this, but at the top of the list are a variety of sleep props. Those objects used to help a baby fall asleep or fall back to sleep if he wakes prematurely. Since sleep is a natural function of the body, the primary sleep cue is sleepiness. Sleep props interfere with the process by becoming the substitute sleep cue instead of sleepiness. Now falling asleep on his own is out of baby's control because it requires a parent's presence to offer the prop. Some sleep props, such as a special blanket or a stuffed animal, are harmless, while others can become addictive. Here are a few sleep props to avoid. Intentionally nursing your baby to sleep. The scenario is all too familiar. A mother nurses her baby to sleep. Slowly raising herself from the chair, she eases towards the crib. While holding her breath, she gently lowers the precious bundle and allows herself to smile. I will tell you, I did this so many times with my son, and I kid you not, it was like he sensed and he knew when I was about to lay him down, and man, he would pitch a fit. Then, frozen in time, she anxiously awaits peace to settle over the crib before backing to the door. She wonders what she will experience this time, freedom or failure. Hoping to escape, the mother knows that if her baby fusses, she will feel obliged to begin the process all over again. Is it poor mother or poor baby? Is nursing appropriate for inducing sleep every time sleep is needed? The answer is no. With the PDF plan, babies will establish healthy sleep patterns. When baby is placed in the crib, he is usually awake. No tiptoeing, breath holding, or absolute quiet is required. He may cry for a few minutes or talk to himself, but he will fall asleep without intervention from mom or dad. Motion and vibration sleep props. Modern mechanical sleep props rely on specific stimulation to lull a baby to sleep, either when the baby is first showing signs of tiredness or after the baby wakes prematurely. The most common sleep prop is a rocking chair. The question here is not whether you should rock or cuddle your baby. We hope that happens often, but are you using the rocking or a variety of dance motions as sleep props? So the book is not telling you not to love on your baby. It's not telling you not to rock your baby, not to sit and hold your baby. The book is saying do not use those behaviors in order to get your baby to go to sleep, because that's not teaching them how to recognize internally on their own that, hey, I'm sleepy, I'm just going to lay here and go to sleep. It's requiring a stimulation to get them to sleep. So the book, this is probably one of the first mentions of it and really highlighting it. It's not telling you to, not rock or cuddle or snuggle with your baby at all. That's not at all what it's saying. Let's see. Other similar props include the vibrating crib mattress and the baby swing. Some parents have tried the unsafe practice of placing their baby on top of a vibrating clothes dryer. Mine was the washing machine. Not for me, but my mom used to do that for me. Of course, when all else fails, there's also the nightly drive with the baby in the car seat. Not for mine. My little one hated the car seat. The sound of the motor and the vibrating chassis of the car sends a baby to dreamland. Sometimes. These sleep props work to some extent, but only until the dryer runs out of time, the car runs out of gas, or mom and dad run out of patience. In the short and long run, putting baby to bed while he is drowsy but still awake facilitates longer and stronger sleep cycles than if placed in the crib already asleep. Sleeping with your baby. Using any of the sleep props just noted may not be the best way to help a child fall asleep and stay asleep, but none of them place a baby at risk. There is, however, one sleep arrangement that has proven very dangerous: sleeping in the same bed with an infant. To the point of becoming faddish, co-sleeping with an infant is on the rise. Maybe you're contemplating the practice for your own family. Some theorists will tell you bed sharing with an infant is the ultimate bonding, attachment, and nighttime breastfeeding experience. It is also deadly. What facts do we know about co-sleeping with an infant? Since 1997, the American Academy of Pediatrics, National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, and the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission have put out medical alerts warning parents of the death risk associated with sleeping next to an infant. The 7-year study tracked the deaths of over 500 infants due to parents lying next to their babies in such a way that they were partially or totally covering them. Do not be misled by that number. It is a small fraction of actual parental overlay cases occurring each year in the U.S. The American Academy of Pediatrics public policy statement reads, "There are no scientific studies demonstrating that bed sharing reduces SIDS. Conversely, there are studies suggesting that bed sharing under certain conditions may actually increase the risk of SIDS." Further, in 2005, the AAP Task Force on SIDS labeled shared sleep with infants as a highly controversial topic and called the practice of bed sharing as hazardous. This is why co-sleeping with infants may be the ultimate risk decision of our day. Infant deaths related to unsafe sleeping practices have reached epidemic proportions, and every one of those deaths was preventable. Infant deaths from SIDS are tragic, but deaths from parental overlay as a result of following a dangerous parenting philosophy are both tragic and needless. Safe and sensible sleeping arrangements start with baby out of mom and dad's bed. And I cannot agree more with that. Having worked on mom baby at the hospital, I can't tell you the amount of times that I would walk in, working the night shift, I'd walk in and there would be, I would be looking for the infant in the little cart, the little bed cart, and I'm looking for the baby and I can't find the baby. And so then, of course, naturally, you look at dad or whatever family members in the room with mom, and the baby's not there. And then you look at mom, and the baby is nestled up under, mom's breast and propped up on a pillow and covered up and warm. And you understand that the thought process behind mom is she's cuddling him, she's loving on him, she's feeding him. They're both sleeping. She's sleeping when the baby sleeps. But I can't tell you how many times, guys, I had to go in and literally press on the areola of a mom just to open the airway for a baby. And how many times I've had to send babies to the NICU for breathing or respiratory distress because they had been laying next to mom and for God only knows how long had not been able to take a full breath. And it's one thing for it to happen in the hospital and you're right there with the NICU. You can have a team on the babies and you can stabilize them. But guys, if you're, at home and you're not in the hospital, it's just not safe, and you're putting yourself and your baby at risk. We see it happen far too often. So I cannot stress that enough. I know it's controversial. I know some people swear by it, and it's the whole, I did this with my kid. I can't tell you that all the years of working night shift that I never had my baby sleep with me in the bed, but I can also tell you that having my oldest son, I was watching TV and he was 3 weeks old and he was lying next to me in the bed. I was awake watching TV and eating a bowl of cereal, and he was asleep. And I just happened to look over and saw him, and his whole face was gray and blue. At the time, I was not a nurse. I was a nursing assistant, so I knew CPR. But even then, I was 20 years old, panicked. And I remember snatching him up, and he did the little where he gasped and he caught his breath. And then we ended up rushing him to the hospital. But they were telling me the end result was that he potentially would have been a SIDS baby had I not actually seen him and startled him to breathe. And that happened with me being awake and him lying right next to me, and I was able to see him. God forbid if he had been resting up against me and I had been asleep and I didn't see him. Because that's something going on in their brain. It's not necessarily, SIDS is not necessarily like a pillow or a blanket or your body. It's their brain doesn't signal for them to breathe, and then they can stop breathing. But I know at the time, and it took 3 weeks for them to rule everything out, because it was just so sudden. He was a healthy baby, and there was no one understood or knew what was going on. So I speak from experience. I speak from learned experience that, we're all human. We all get tired and exhausted. But guys, co-sleeping with your infants and your newborns is just so, so risky, and it's not worth it. Not worth it at all. Let's see. So with that, the next section says, where should my baby sleep? Where should the crib or bassinet be located? This question should be answered before the baby arrives. Will it be in the parents' or the baby's room? There are advantages and disadvantages to both locations. The advantage to having the baby sleep in the parents' room for the first 2 or 3 weeks is limited to convenience for nighttime feedings. Your newborn will need to feed at least every 3 hours, so the closeness of the crib is helpful. One downside is with all the unfamiliar sounds and stirring noises babies tend to make, this will keep new parents awake, wondering if all is okay with the baby. A second downside has to do with the baby's ability to achieve continuous nighttime sleep. Sharing a room after 4 weeks can postpone a baby's ability to sleep through the night upward to 4 months. If your baby is placed in his own room and you are unsure about the arrangement, consider purchasing a monitor which will alert you to any immediate need your baby might have. In summary, the best and safest way to help your little one fall asleep and stay asleep is the natural way. You do not need costly gadgets, a new car, or risky parenting theories. Instead of a sleep prompt, confidently establish a basic routine to promote restful sleep. Feed your baby, rock and love him, but put him down in his own crib before he falls asleep. And then it says join us online as they continue the conversation. It's like babywise.life. And they share real life stories on there as well. Chapter 4 is facts on feeding. And as I was looking through the chapter, it's quite lengthy. And given that the majority of us are reading and following along with this book for the purposes of discussing the Watts case and not parenting, at least that's my reason for reading the book on the channel. So if you are more interested or would like more information on the facts on feeding that's found in chapter 4 of Babywise, I would suggest purchasing the book, or even just going to a library, and you're more than welcome. Obviously you can read chapter 4. I'm going to go through chapter 4 and pick out the facts that I think deserve to be highlighted, and that way we can pass along through chapter 4 quickly and move on to the discussion. Okay, so just a few facts from chapter 4. It's listed as facts on feeding. Cuddles, kisses, and proper nutrition. This is a good way to start life as a baby. Cuddles and kisses are the easy part, but what constitutes proper nutrition and where does it come from? Whether the calories come from breast or bottle, what is of prime importance is the tender affection provided during feeding times. There is, however, a difference in the two food sources, and understanding those differences will help provide the confidence parents need to make an informed decision about what is best for their baby and family. Again, being informed. What do expectant parents need to know? First, feeding a baby is perhaps the most basic task of infant management. A baby's sucking and rooting reflexes are well developed at birth, and he will satisfy those reflexes by rooting and sucking on anything near his mouth. When it comes to a broad comparison between breast milk and formula, it is no surprise that mother's milk is the perfect food for babies, providing numerous health benefits. According to the AAP, research evidence suggests that breast milk decreases the incidence of severity of diarrhea, lower respiratory infections, bacterial meningitis, and urinary tract infection. The Academy also points out various studies demonstrating that breast milk may help protect against SIDS, allergic diseases, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, and other chronic digestive diseases. Breast milk is easily digested, provides excellent nutrition, contains the right balance of proteins and fats, and also provides additional antibodies for building a baby's immune system. Unlike formula, which needs to be prepared, stored, warmed, and packed for every outing, breast milk is ready whenever and wherever. As long as the breast milk remains inside mom, it never goes bad and has no expiration date. There are also health benefits from mom breastfeeding, and what new mother is not eager to get back into her pre-pregnancy clothes? So it goes into the health benefits of breastfeeding, which again, I don't want to turn this into a bottle versus breastfed debate. That's not what this is for. So the PDF approach encourages full feedings about every 2.5 to 3 hours rather than a cluster of small feedings. Working to achieve full feedings is key to PDF success. Just listen to your baby's cues is good advice if you know what to listen and look for. Mom's chronic fatigue is another unwelcome cue. When she continually wakes in the morning exhausted from multiple middle-of-the-night feeding sessions, her body is telling her that what she is doing is not working and needs to be changed. Whether you breast or bottle feed, a full feeding at each feeding is one of the goals to work towards. Do not panic if it does not happen at each feeding, but this is what you're striving for. Some key characteristics associated with a full feeding are somewhat obvious, but a sufficient amount of time to receive a full feeding. So babies are all different, but 10 to 15 minutes per breast or a 20 to 30 minute feeding session. Hearing the swallowing of the milk, that was something that my lactation consultant really made me pay attention to with my boys, was, especially with my firstborn, was just making sure that I was paying attention to. You could see their little mouths are moving, but if you don't hear that little gulp going down, then they're not getting liquid, they're not getting milk. So those are just some things to listen out for. The baby burping well after feedings and the baby napping well. Those are all indications of a full feeding. Snack feedings or cluster feedings work against a baby's ability to organize and synchronize hunger rhythms. There is also a potential health risk. The more a baby snacks, the less nutrition he receives. The less nutrition he receives, and the greater the health risk. So those people that just say, oh, feed your baby whenever he's crying, or anytime they look like they're hungry, then feed them, or the answer is always put a bottle in their mouth or feed them, that's not always the healthiest option, because you actually are putting the baby at risk for other issues. Let's see. Then it goes through several positions for holding the baby when it comes to nursing or even bottle feeding. did talk a little bit about growth spurts, and I did think that was important, especially when we're considering nap times and things like that. A growth spurt occurs when a baby requires additional calories for a specific growth need, most likely to restore depleted energy to the body cells that store the energy. The extra calories received during this increased feeding time provide the reserves that support the process of visible growth that follows a growth spurt. How will a mom know when the growth spurt is over? Normal feeding cycles will resume, and the next day, baby will nap longer than normal. Guys, it's hard work growing, so it tires them out. This is because growth spurts are fatiguing for babies as much as they are for mothers. Lord knows I don't need to grow out anymore. I'd like to, stay put. I think that's something we all talk about after we have babies, is not needing to grow in weight by any means. So that concludes chapters 3 and 4. I'm going to pause the book reading there, and then we will go over questions and discussions. I don't know that this one's going to be as extensive here at the end, but we will see. So with that, let's dive into the questions and observations. Now that I've had a few moments to kind of think about the case and think about these 2 chapters that I just read, the things that really start to stand out to me is through reading the book, you really begin to see more of a guide taking place. And that's really what all parenting books are, self-help books, things of that nature. They are meant to be a tool and a guide to help you build a foundation that works well for your family. And so I'm not quite understanding, and I never did understand the harsh criticism about her techniques as far as putting them to bed, having them a regimented schedule, insisting that they take naps. And a lot of that is typical. Moms and dads pick and choose how to best parent their own children. And we're not always going to see eye to eye with it. I will say that as of now, we have not reached anything where it's mentioned Benadryl or Tylenol or anything like that. If anything, it's mentioned feeding techniques and positions to help alleviate or prevent gas or discomforts that could potentially awaken the baby while they're sleeping. And even the time periods that the book has suggested, as far as, if you lay the baby down and the baby is, a little restless or still fussy, but it's okay to let them, self-soothe themselves for 5 to 15 minutes or 15 minutes. I think it said like 5 to 30 minutes or something like that. But the time period is actually recommended in person by pediatricians. And I will say that while I welcome everyone's opinions, and again, we can respectfully agree to disagree, however, I do want to say that just as much as some of you come in the comments about new versus old techniques and things like that, you also have to keep in mind that just because something is popular or prominent right now, it's no different than how another technique once upon a time was prominent and the happening thing. So these techniques have still been in play. They are still backed by the American Pediatrics Association. The statistics are still there. They are what they are. And while, again, it's your choice how you raise your children, I think when we're discussing this case, it's very, very important to not just blast a system or a process or a program, because
we think that we know the ins and outs of how horrible or unhealthy something is without genuinely understanding how it's supposed to work. Now, I'm not going to say that Shanann did not have her own methods and ways of dealing with certain things. And I think that's really unfair for any of us to have that suggestion that, we can look at this woman's choices as far as parenting and we can critique them and criticize them. But at the end of the day, what you and I do or did for our own children may not align with that. So it basically just comes back down to say that this book, through the first 4 chapters, it's been very educational. It's been informative. It is backed by science. It's backed by doctors. You culturally or socially do not have to accept the method. And again, that's your parental choice. But it is worth reading and understanding what Babywise truly is, as opposed to hearing the name, listening to other people's opinions about it, and having not once read through the entire book. Because I will say that all of the channels that I've heard blasting this book, they've been saying stuff that I'm just simply not reading as I'm reading this book. So I think that's really, really important to note, and I think that's something that we can all learn from. Think about it, guys. If all of these channels are blasting a book, a parenting book, they're going on calling it evil, saying it's horrible, all of this stuff, and then they're giving examples in their videos, but the very things that they're talking about in their videos is not supported in the book. So they're not really accurately giving you their opinion of the book or of the method. They're giving you their opinion and their perspective on someone else's idea of what the book is. And that's not fair to the authors. Much like if you're looking at a case and you are blasting your opinion about something, but you don't know the full story, or you've only watched one Dateline episode and suddenly you think you're an expert on it. That's not the case. So I'm going to leave you guys with this tonight or today. And so I'm going to leave you guys with this on this episode, and that is, let this series be an eye-opener for you, that if you start hearing, I don't want to say negative opinions, but opposing opinions about a method or a technique or a book or a person or a case, and something is just not quite sitting right with you, dig a little deeper. Or before you start voicing your opinions on things, make sure that you're educated on the content that you're putting out. Because nowhere in these first 4 chapters has it said anything along the lines of the videos that I've seen completely blasting this method. Again, I'll leave you with this. I've never once used Babywise. I have 2 children, one's fully grown and one's 15. I never used Babywise, but I do recognize many of the methods because I remember being told in the hospital how long to nurse the baby on each side. I now know, having worked L&D and worked mom baby and having consulted patients on how to properly hold and nurse babies, how to properly burp them. Going from the first time mom at 20 years old and becoming the educated nurse and healthcare provider, I'm able to see that some of these techniques are still around. They're still very much used, and they are still recommended in hospitals. So all of this blasting information or misinformation in the comment sections or on other videos on different channels, it's really doing the society and public a disservice, because what about the first time moms that are thinking about using a certain technique or method, and they're getting all of this misinformation out there? So if you are a new mom, if you are pregnant or thinking of having a baby, and it's the fun and exciting part after you get the positive pregnancy test, and that is you go buy all the baby books and you start reading things. Listen, guys, in the world that we live in today, there's so much false information at your fingertips. Do yourself a favor, make sure that you are going straight to the source. And if you're wanting to adhere to a method of parenting or discipline or feeding schedules or anything of that sort, just make sure you go to the source, do your research, and read from reputable sources. With that, guys, I'm going to let it be, and we will continue on to chapter 5.